Everyone for joining us. It's my pleasure. Just going to give a short introduction for Dave and WombleTech before we jump into, or let Dave jump into his presentation. But one of the reasons I'm so excited about today is one of DS's 5 core values is move humanity forward, and it's one that I'm really passionate about, and love seeing all of the DS community rally behind that in various ways. But one thing that we've come to learn and really embrace on our journey is that business is a really key driver for change. Everyone plays their part, not-for-profits and government and whatnot, but we really see the role that we in business have to play through the work that we do, and how we choose to manage all of our resources. So we do some corporate social responsibility. So we give back to the community through things like our partnership with Code Like a Girl, and we volunteer through initiatives such as Flying Robot School and Random Acts of Kindness. I saw Samara's on the call. So Random Acts of Kindness has been a big part of DS's history, and we still like supporting that through our volunteering efforts. But another concept we're passionate about is the idea of creating shared value. So that's through the work we do can we create positive impact. So we're partners of the Shared Value Project. Earlier this year, we co-developed and released an action plan framework to help organizations seeking to do well by doing good, like to promote innovation in that space. So that's something to check out. And we're also working with that community at the moment with DS's deep expertise and heritage in the energy space, looking at how we can explore the use of standalone power systems. So leveraging our power sensor product to help promote resilience in rural communities. So they're just a couple of examples of the things we do through the Shared Value Project. And we're also always seeking to work with clients who are making a positive impact. So Swoop Aero, who are a drone company that deliver medication and vaccines, things like that. Recently just finished a project with the Black Dog Institute around helping people living with suicidal thoughts, working with Lifeblood around blood donations, those types of examples. So that's what we're really striving towards, to as much of our work that we do with clients to be having a positive social impact through the work that we do. And as part of that, in terms of product development, I think this is where we're starting to tie into the message we're going to be hearing from Dave today about, we love to bring new products into the world, but what are the intended and unintended consequences of the products and services that we're creating? And how can we think about their full life cycle, particularly with physical products? Thinking about how they're going to be disposed of or ideally recycled. And that's again what Dave's going to be running us through. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Dave, and just a brief story how I heard about WombleTech. I've got probably the one time in my life I can thank Facebook for anything. The algorithm found me, and I saw an ad in there and some really awesome stories about the work that WombleTech are doing. So reached out on Facebook, and Dave and I struck up a conversation. So now very proud that DS is on board to be supporting WombleTech, and we thought it's just a great opportunity to introduce him to our colleagues in our community, to hear about the work that WombleTech's doing and how we can all contribute in various ways. So Dave, I will hand over the screen to you and take it away.
Going around the world 3 times, and hopefully we should be there. So everyone, I'm Dave Hall, CEO, founder and CEO of WombleTech. Also work in technology and banking and finance. I've done for the last 25 years. Suncorp currently, ANZ Bank, NAB, PwC Consulting, SMS Consulting, various others as well. So some of you might have seen my trail of destruction, as you travel around some of those clients in your paths potentially. So I'll just sort of tell you a bit about sort of what the sort of where the core of WombleTech came from. This is Uray. So Uray is a Burmese national. He was born in a refugee camp in Burma, one of the oppressed minorities there, which are sort of well known. Some of the atrocities that happened. Uray was in the sort of process for asylum seeker refugee status for for a very, very long time, I think about 10 years. Finally had his asylum seeker refugee status granted late last year and arrived in Melbourne February 2020 and went, of course, straight into lockdown. So Uray is studying at Victoria Uni's TAFE languages other than English, language additional to English program. Sorry, I keep changing it. To try and get himself be able to integrate into society, move on to vocational training, get ahead in the world, and become a valuable member of society. Unfortunately, because of the lockdown, and particularly the more harsh stage 4 restrictions that we experienced here in Melbourne, access to universities, TAFEs, community centres, libraries, etc., was completely restricted. And so Uray and his whole class, who their teacher Nicole reached out to me, were basically unable to study. They were trying to do their online study using these shitty little Android phones with about a 2-inch screen and probably about 500 meg of RAM if they're lucky. And so Uray was one of the recipients that actually, because of the lockdown, ended up having to drive around through the western suburbs. Uray's out in Hoppers Crossing, and drop off laptops to all of the class one by one. And what was amazing is just how super positive, how grateful, how energetic, despite all of the trials that life had put him and his colleagues through, how they were still really focused on wanting to move forward, wanting to achieve, and wanting to get better in life. And this very simple thing of having access to adequate technology to be able to do so, to be able to study, to be able to connect with people online, to be able to apply for jobs online, to be able to go to medical appointments through telehealth, etc., is something that's a real gap for people who are in disadvantage, whether that's coming from a refugee background, whether it's people from long-term unemployment, people who've been in trouble with the justice system. We've had people who have psychosocial disabilities, unable to leave the house, unable to sort of interact as easily as you or I might. We've had people who are survivors of domestic violence, fleeing the family home, having to leave everything behind and having no resources to be able to, for either them or their kids to be able to study, connect and work. And so Uray is not at all an isolated incident, and not just from a refugee point of view, even Australian sort of locals, multi-generational locals who have fallen into disadvantage have this same problem. And in today's day and age, really access to technology is a key to get yourself ahead in life. Even simple things, as I said, like going to a psychologist appointment or being able to apply for Centrelink. You need to be able to go online and do that these days. Almost needs to be inserted into Maslow's hierarchy of health, hierarchy of needs, in my view. And yet in Australia, which is first world country, very modern, we have around 100,000 people in the same situation as Uray and Amanda and many others you'll see that I'll talk about later in the presentation, who don't have access to adequate technology. I think Alicia, actually, when I did the dry run last week, sort of found some interesting information about how this access to adequate technology has actually been enshrined as a basic human right. And yet Australia, we're feeling very, very well short on our ability to meet that human right, even for our local residents, let alone our ability to potentially help beyond our own borders. Simultaneously, in Australia, we actually throw away 4 million computers, right? So we could actually solve that problem really, really quickly. So 4 million computers get thrown away today, and they go through a variety of channels. They might, just go to normal landfill, which still a large proportion actually do, unfortunately. Some of them might go to e-waste, which is sort of, people think e-waste is a good thing. But e-waste, basically what that involves is usually shipping the computers offshore, therefore incurring carbon costs, etc. of doing so. They get crushed down, sometimes very responsibly, but sometimes actually in very irresponsible means that creates huge amounts of emissions, health damage to the workers in those factories in second and third world countries. And they're basically reclaiming just a very small portion of the raw ingredients that went into that, the metals basically that went into the manufacture, the copper, the gold, some of the aluminium chassis from the cases and things like that. So all of that value, all of the work that we do in the IT industry to go and take those relatively cheap raw materials and add massive amounts of value to take a dollar's worth of raw materials and turn that into a $5,000 supercomputer, right? That's gone, that's vanished, that's disappeared, never can come back again. And yet at the same time, there's so many people who could very easily have access to that and do better with it. And so this was sort of, I guess, the twin sort of challenges I was looking at in terms of when I founded WombleTech. And the story of WombleTech, how it actually started, I'm speaking slightly out of order, but I was actually at a waste transfer station after one Christmas. I've got 4 children, and so Christmas presents sort of piles come in, and the cardboard and polystyrene and whatever else needs to go out, and a normal sort of 120-litre curbside bin just can't cope with that influx. And so I took it down to the local waste transfer station to deposit for recycling, the polystyrene, the cardboard, etc. And I noticed over in the corner there was these e-waste bins that were literally overflowing with TVs, computers, printers, etc. And up on the top of the e-waste bin, there was a couple of fairly decent looking machines. Like one had a Cooler Master case, and one had a Thermaltake case, and had dual GPU cards in them, graphics cards in them. And thought, okay, that's interesting, because my son Oliver, who was 15 at the time, had his little MacBook Air for school and was happy enough with that for doing his schoolwork, but he wanted to play all the latest shoot 'em ups, Call of Duty, this, that, and the other, and little MacBook Air was not really able to keep up with that. But it was sort of a bit low to buy yet another computer for the house, and so just when no one was looking, basically nicked these computers off the top of the e-waste bin, and went home, and Oliver and I Frankensteined them together and sort of made them into what we called the tip PC. We took the best of both of them, put them together, and turned it into a computer that he was playing all of these Call of Duty type games, 1080p, very well. And about 6 months later, when he had a part-time job and wanted to sort of upgrade to a bigger and better machine, he actually sold it on eBay for $600. And that just really sort of, to me, really drove home just how much value was getting thrown away. There was at least $600 worth of value that was sitting there just in those two machines, potentially more, that was just getting thrown away, while at the same time we have people in desperate need, who are unable to access it. And this is not just a social cause as well. There's actually increasing government regulation. They're saying we have to manage our e-waste better. It's been recognised as a major problem to our environment and potentially to our economy. And so there are standards for manufacturers, for computer manufacturers, for component manufacturers around actually having to have very clear procedures in place for the collection, storage and disposal, and what happens to it at the end of its life. So not just, hey, I've sold it to Dave and now it's Dave's problem. It's actually up to each manufacturer. They have to have processes in place and standards in place to enable that stuff to be claimed and recycled responsibly at the end. And they work with local councils and others to make sure they do that. And so as part of some of, the product development work that DS works with your clients on, this is an increasing consideration that you need to be looking at, both from a regulatory point of view, as well as obviously from a sort of a moral point of view, and potentially from an economic point of view. That the less we waste, obviously, the less things cost, and therefore there can be a good return on investment for managing waste responsibly, either through not wasting things in the first time, reducing the amount of input materials, by about managing, getting second and third party sort of reuse opportunities, or by going through responsible waste processing at the end. And so what the solution, I guess the answer was WombleTech, where we basically take computers that we get donated from individuals and businesses. We upgrade, we secure, wipe all the data, we test the machines, make sure they're working well. We upgrade them with brand new SSD hard disks so that they run nice and fast. Make sure they've got enough RAM, make sure they can do all of the main sort of basic processing tasks that you need to do today, to go on the web, do Zoom meetings, watch cat videos on YouTube, whatever else it might be. And then we place those computers with people in need, such as Graciela, who you can see on the right-hand side here, who was studying design and didn't have an adequate computer to do it. What's interesting is that the machines we're able to successfully place and give great value to these recipients we're actually able to salvage a lot more than what you might expect. The nature of, obviously, as we all know today, everything's gone cloud-based, online, etc. So the amount of local processing power you need is actually a lot less actually today than it even was nearly 10 years ago. So we've actually been able to take almost any 10-year-old laptop that's in good working condition with those simple upgrades I talked about in terms of SSDs, RAMs, and a fresh, clean, tuned down install of Windows 10, actually makes a perfectly good web PC for doing online learning, for engaging through social media, through doing whatever else it might be you want to do. And so we've had a lot of success in that, even up to 10 years old. And obviously the nature of our recipients varies. We have people like Graciela studying design who have higher end needs. We have people who are much, sort of at more beginning ends, using basic web browsing, email, etc. And so we tailor the equipment we give to them based on their actual needs. It's been an interesting journey. So actually, as I talked about how it started at the waste transfer station. But there's also been sort of it's been, I guess, everyone knows in the sort of this whole startup sort of world, and starting a charity is no different than starting any other type of enterprise, where you need to sort of learn as you go. And so one of the things, for example, that we were doing early on was we were principally, getting direct requests, from people in the public, people in need, for computers. And we were very happy to supply them. The philosophy we've got is that everyone deserves this. You don't need to be sort of solving world peace to do it. It's a basic human right, and therefore we supply it to anyone who is in need. But we did find that the process of going through and making sure there really was genuine need there, and so we're optimizing where the equipment went, was actually quite a large overhead and something that wasn't really our core strength. And so one of the pivots we made was to move into more partnerships with various charities, including Sacred Heart Mission, Drummond Street Services, Jesuit Social, and a number of others you see mentioned there on the bottom half of the slide. And so we've actually evolved our models and now exclusively working through those charity and support agencies to actually manage, map, and place with the recipients, because they've already got the relationships with them there. They've already got the other support services around that can help them in terms of housing, in terms of whatever else it might need to be, that can then help them get the best value out of it. And they also know that these are people that are in genuine need. And then at the top of the slide there, you can see some of the partnerships, including DS, that we've got in place on what we call the supply side, so getting the donations in. So to date, the vast majority of our donations have been from individuals, and primarily through our social media campaigns, such as the one that caught Pete's eye, and some of the stories that we've got up on our Facebook and Instagram pages there. But increasingly, we are looking to partner with companies, education institutions, government departments, local councils, including Moreland, who we've actually recently put a partnership in place with, to be able to get much larger volumes of donations coming through, so we can really address that problem of those 100,000 people who don't have access to adequate technology. And ultimately, the vision is to scale this beyond our borders. And if we get to the point where we've saturated the market in Australia and every person who needs and wants but can't afford a computer has one, there's no reason we can't be going and then kitting out villages in Bangladesh, working partnering with local telcos, etc. As well. And I guess there's been other learnings along the way as we've gone. We've been very deliberate to not scale too quickly. We're principally Victorian based at this point in time. We have tendrils sneaking out into other states. We're taking donations via courier services from other states at the moment. And we are starting to selectively place via some of those partners into other states, such as one we sent to WA the other day to an Aboriginal community there. But because we need to make sure we've got our processes right, we've learned, we've adapted, whether that's about our build automation, our QA, whatever else it might be, so that we don't fall over ourselves as we grow. And as I said, we've had quite a lot of luck being able to get all sorts of equipment creating great value. We had 100 iPad 2s donated by Jetstar. They were the old ones that we used for the in-flight entertainment. People say, "Oh, iPad 2, what's that useful for? No one would need that. It's a paperweight." But it turns out, actually, an iPad 2, you can still, browse the web, you can do email, you can watch cat videos on YouTube or other more educational material, hopefully. You can even install Zoom. And so some of those core things that people need to do, actually, we could enable people to do, as a complementary thing with the laptops we're finding out through those iPads. And I guess this is where part of today is a bit of a pitch for your help, and how you, whether you're members of DS or partners, clients of DS? What can you do to help out with this cause? And obviously the easiest one, or the most obvious one, is right up the top there in donating your old devices. And I saw Johnny on the call. I actually went around to drop past Johnny's place the other day and picked up a few very nice tower machines. Thank you, Johnny. That hopefully we'll find some good opportunities to place into local communities and schools and community centres. Laptops are in very, very high demand as a result of the fact that a lot of the people we're working with are in unstable housing. They might have to get up and move at a moment's notice. We've got one example. There's a group of 8 Afghan refugee ladies who had nowhere to live. Through Drummond Street Services, they identified a volunteer who was able to take them in, and there's got these 8 women living in a 1-bedroom apartment in the north of Melbourne. And so obviously having laptops they can sort of use and spread around is very easy for them. Even if you can just help to spread the word, through our social media. I'll show the links on the last page, and I think Alicia will hopefully send those around in the afternoon. Apologies, a bit of background noise here. But the other, as I said, really to be able to sort of scale up the volume, we need to be getting also larger volume donations coming in from corporate, educational, government donors. So if you have any contacts, either in the sort of IT asset management and desktop, sort of end user compute services, or probably preferably even into the corporate social responsibility area of any of the clients you're working with, or just companies or government departments you happen to know people in, please do reach out and help us make a warm introduction so we can start to talk about the opportunity to work with them together. All of our work is currently done as on a volunteer basis. So we have about 5 volunteers currently helping us do from social media to the technical work, etc. And so if this is a cause that you're interested and passionate about it, please reach out. We're always very happy to take on additional volunteers. And one of the things that the feedback I've received from our volunteers, including Vasey, Ben, Thomas, and Nathan, is that WombleTech was a really great opportunity for them to be able to volunteer and do social value add compared to a lot of other opportunities that are out there, which are a lot less flexible in terms of having to make a very consistent time commitment when you might have a variable lifestyle in terms of your work and family situation, whatever. That means you can't always do the same number of hours per week, or it may be very inflexible in terms of when you have to do it. It has to be 9 till 3 when actually you're working, you're on a client side, or you're in a project meetings, you can't do it. Whereas WombleTech is sort of something that can be done very much sort of in your spare time, fit around your life, and scaled up and down to fit the life that you've got. And obviously DS is one of our key partners, as I mentioned, who we're partnering with to encourage, via, obviously DS has the subsidisation scheme. I don't know if I use the right word, sorry, Alicia. Towards you buying your own laptops rather than the company owning them. And so DS has worked with WombleTech to sort of help promote internally within your company, within DS, to say, look, as you're upgrading, here's a great option of what to do with the old equipment as you upgrade to a new one, and also hosting events like this to try and help spread the word. Thank you. Pete or Alicia, was there anything more you wanted to just comment in terms of the DS, what we're doing together from a DS point of view?
I think that covers it nicely, and just like you said, I guess we're in this situation where these are the tools of our trade, so we get supported in keeping those tools up to date. But eventually, out the other end of the conveyor belt of devices in the home, one becomes available. So it'd be great to see them go to you guys to put them to good use.
Thanks, Pete. I'll finish with I guess a couple more stories of just examples of people and programs that we've helped. So on the left, we've got Amanda here. Amanda is a lady who has had a bit of a hard time over the last few years. So she was a single mother, but got involved in some unfortunate circumstances through by which she through no fault of her own lost her children. She got involved in bad circles of people, involved into criminal activity, and actually was incarcerated for 3.5 years, and really struggling to find, well, how could she possibly then sort of move forward into the world and sort of become a productive member of society again. And again, one of those things that was a key, was the ability to be able to get online, to be able to write a resume, apply for jobs, do online study, do all these sorts of things. And so Amanda's support organisation Parole reached out to us and helped us place a laptop with her, so that she can now sort of really turn her life around. And that's really I guess the core of what WombleTech's about, is being just that little piece of assistance. For some it might be big, for some it might be little, but something that helps someone make their life better, get them out of that bad cycle, that bad situation they're in. And Amanda is a good example of that. Another one on the right-hand side there is a program the Sacred Heart Mission, one of our partners, runs, called the Journey to Social Inclusion program. And what that is it's a program aimed at addressing homelessness, but not by just saying, hey, here's a homeless person, we're going to chuck you in a room and now our job is done, because there's a lot of research and a lot of track record that shows that doesn't work, because these people are not adapted to that lifestyle. They feel very uncomfortable living that way. They're not able to hold down stable employment. They're not able to sort of function in sort of normal sort of modes of operating that would imply. And so they actually just end up straight back on the street again. Whereas what Sacred Heart Missions program does is to actually, as a 2-year program, take them through a process of giving them housing, but also giving them the education, the tools, the conditioning, the assistance to be able to then get used to those sort of normal parts of what we take for granted as being a functioning member of society. And part of that is be able to get online, do online study, apply for jobs, etc. And so we've been supporting that program with Sacred Heart for quite a while. And so that's pretty much where I'm at. We'll sort of, if the sort of heartfelt stories from the people didn't help, maybe the cute puppy will. So please do, reach out for any assistance you think we can give. Feedback and input as well. Obviously, always very, very welcome too. If there's things that you feel, hey, have you thought of doing this, or is there an opportunity to this or this or that better? Put up our links or sort of tags to our social media pages there. Please do share them as wide and far as you can, and also feel free to get in touch with myself directly, David Hall, directly, dave@wombletech.com.au, and my mobile phone number. So that's all I had. But I guess we've sort of gone through a fair bit of stuff, and just comments at the start. Really keen to have a bit of a chance for a bit of a discussion, whether it's questions, comments, thoughts, your own stories, your own ideas about what are some of the things that we can do, either to help with digital inclusion and that digital divide, or things that we can be doing, in and outside of our normal processes to help address the growing e-waste problem.
Thanks, David. We've got a couple of questions, or a few questions coming through in the chat there that you might be able to see. So Voon's asked about software licenses.
Yep. Yeah, sorry. It's a good question. Thank you, Vern. So we actually install clean Windows 10 on all of the machines, Windows 10 Home usually, and Home more so just because it's easier to use for your average punter. We find typically most machines that are under 8 years old actually have a Windows key already supplied, either on a sticker on the back of it or stored in the BIOS on the motherboard, so we don't have to buy a license. For the ones that we don't, we actually use reclaimed license keys off laptops that we were unable to salvage because they were too broken or whatever else. And even when we run out of those, there's a steadier supply of that same category of licenses available on eBay for about $10 each. So that's how we do the licensing. I see there's a question about funding of the upgrades, which is probably a bit nice related one. So hey, where does that $10 come from even? So the SSDs cost about $32 each, depending on the market rate at the point in time. At the moment, we're using Crucial BX 400 120 gig SSDs. They are all purchased brand new. We don't, if the laptop already has an SSD in it because it's a newer model, we would test that it's working well and fast, and we'll just keep that one in it. Otherwise, we'll replace the traditional spinning hard disk with an SSD. RAM, we almost always are able to just do that out of scavenging from the ones that we've been unable to save. They might have a broken screen or too many keys missing off the keyboard or whatever else. So we make sure that we've got a minimum of 4 gig RAM, which doesn't sound like a lot, but with a stripped down Windows 10 install, actually it runs, and you're running a new Edge, it actually runs perfectly well. But typically we go out with 8 or more. The funding model of WombleTech, so it's actually run as a social enterprise. So we don't actually take in sort of money donations, because part of the philosophy is we want it to be a self-funding, self-sustainable business, such that it can scale infinitely without taking away from the the money that would be going to other causes. And so the way we fund it is through an optional contribution to the laptops from the recipients' charity partners. So people like Drummond Street Service, etc. They have a whole lot of funding, grants, etc. available, and there's various other grant schemes available, such as the Queen's Fund and a few others that individuals can apply for as well. And so we ask for a contribution of $100 per laptop, and that covers all of our costs, including the parts, the shipping, the sort of running the accounting software, the hosting the website, whatever else, etc. it might be. But then we also are very open that if a particular recipient or charity organisation doesn't have the means, then we will give it to them for free anyway. So we have a philosophy that no one should miss out just because they don't have the funds. But we find that because it's only $100 and because there are these grants and funding sources available, sort of 80 to 90% of the recipients that we place with, there is an ability for them to make that contribution, and so that funds our operations. And our overheads are obviously very low, being a completely volunteer-based organisation.
Cool. There's another question there from Sean about, are you working with the local e-waste collection sites, or are you collecting items from them now?
Trying to. Good question. Thank you, Sean. So if you know anyone that works in those local council or e-waste companies, then please let me know, because that's one that we've been trying to. That's, as I said, the starting of it was stealing stuff off their piles. That's not necessarily a sustainable model for a registered organisation. So we are working. So as I said, we've got Moreland Council, which is out in the north area, which one of my volunteers Vasey lives. They've actually agreed to partner with us. They have us on their website as their recommended e-waste sort of option, and then we're looking as part of their next year's sort of hard rubbish collection scheme, that actually on the flyers that they send out, there'll actually be a WombleTech reference there. But we are trying to work with those organisations as well. Haven't had as much progress yet. That's one of the key areas that we're keen to work on also, to sort of increase the scale of donations that we can get coming in. And another one, Sean. So timescale for expansion to Sydney and other areas. So in terms of donations now, so if there's donations in Sydney, that if you're in Sydney and you've got one, if you're a DS employee, DS has agreed to act as a sort of a central collection point, and we'll sort of courier them down from the DS Sydney office. In terms of expansion to Sydney, we're probably ready now. Really, I guess it comes matter to having the right people there with the passion, interest, and time to sort of run the local cell, if you like, of WombleTech. And so, Sean, if yourself or anyone else in the call is interested, or you know someone that is, then feel free to reach out. We can sort of take you through the model, how it works, and potentially look to do there. So we're being a little bit tentative, as I said, as I was presenting, that we don't want to sort of scale too quickly and fall over ourselves, but we've sort of got to a point we've got a good level of standardization in our processes and outputs now that we're probably ready to start to tentatively scale into the larger sort of adjacent regions. Current volume that we're doing, thank you, Voon. So we've what are we doing at the moment? About 1,200 a year, so I'd say, so around 100 a month is the sort of the run rate that we're at. It sort of varies. We sort of see peaks and troughs in supply because of the sort of nature of a lot of our donations currently coming from individuals, is that we sort of get a big Facebook campaign. All the people that saw that happen to have one in the cupboard that they thought of have donated it. So then things will dry up for a bit. So we'll have months where we'll get 100. We'll have other months where we'll only get 20 or 30 or 40. So it is quite variable at the moment. That is one of the big challenges we've got. Is we've actually got a very large backlog from our charity partners. We've got about 250 sort of registered recipients that are sort of ready, willing, waiting, and qualified to have a computer. But we just do not have the supply, the actual donations of computers on the other side to be able to actually to give to them. So hence the sort of the plea earlier for any either donations from yourselves and your family and friends, but also any introductions you can make to potentially larger volume donors, like companies who might be constantly sort of cycling their machines as they get to their 3-4 year end of life cycle, etc.
Cool. Thanks, Voon. And anyone else, feel free to jump off mute or pop your questions in. I've got a quick one, Dave. Just in terms of scope beyond just pure computers like laptops and towers, and I saw you had some monitors in your photos, but I guess I'm specifically thinking I've got some sort of outdated audio production gear that still works fine. Is that something that you'd considered taking on or placing, or does that start to get a bit too complicated?
So it probably again comes to the same question about where and how we grow. And so, yeah, ultimately we do want to be able to take all sorts of electronic equipment in. I guess what that relies on is having scale in a couple of different dimensions. So scale from I guess just that, we've got enough scale and volume and cash flow, et cetera, to be able to have dedicated spaces, storage, et cetera. And we've got that scale of reach out to finding the right partners that would get value from that. So that outdated audio equipment that you mentioned, that would probably be absolutely awesome for a disadvantaged school out in the sort of disadvantaged suburbs somewhere, right, where they want to learn about audio engineering and this and that, the other, but there's no way they're going to be able to afford to buy anything. I guess we don't want to spread ourselves too thin in terms of, okay, we're trying to reach out to schools and trying to reach out to this, trying to reach out to that, where from a point of view of computers, schools actually have very good programs in place through the government to actually make sure they have access to technology, et cetera. So, however, my son is a mad audio engineering geekhead, so send me a list of what you've got, and he might be interested to have a bit of a dig through the pile. But or actually, I know his music teacher, actually, Mr. Trafford, actually has sort of quite a lot of sort of connections in. So we might as a sort of more once-off thing, might be able to find a way to get some value for that. But as an organisational sort of approach, yeah, we're trying to just stick to doing the things that we're doing right now better and better. We're not doing them perfectly yet. We've still got a few rough edges on the process. We still want to scale them and get them bigger. We want to make sure we get them really right, and then start adding other adjacencies. So similarly, we've had people ask us, for example, are you going to provide internet access, or are you going to train people on how to use the computers, or are you going to do this or that, the other? So the answer is almost pretty much the same generic answer is no. We're going to focus on doing this thing that we're different at, that no one else does really, really well, and then add to it over time.
Cool. Makes sense. Awesome. Any more questions for Dave? Sean?
Sure. Yeah. Can I unmute? Yes. Yeah, can you hear me? Cool. Yes, all right. It saves me typing. I was just typing. Very, very interesting, David, and thank you for hosting this, guys. My question is around with smaller devices. I've got kids as well, and my 13-year-old he's got a collection of Pis, so Raspberry Pis, which you can pick up for $40 at this stage, and there's a lot of grunt in them. So how does that change the model then, and the effort involved in actually getting a PC and a laptop back up to spec, whereas you could buy a Pi with 4 gig of RAM in it for $50?
Yeah, so it's interesting. So there is efforts. There was I assume it's still running. It's called One Laptop Per Child, WLPC, where they were basically trying to create low cost, using this sort of same, not necessarily using Pis, but the same sort of componentry and processes and sort of cost models that are in place there to be able to create laptops that would actually cost, I think they were targeting $200 each, and they were going to get subsidized or something. I can't remember the exact model. So that was the idea. I guess a couple of reasons that we're sort of focusing on the path that we're doing. So one is, why manufacture and build new stuff when the other stuff still works perfectly well? That's part of the philosophy of what we're trying to do. The other is that because there was actually, when I sort of was starting WombleTech, or actually after I started, I was doing a bit of sort of competitor analysis, if you like, of who else was doing some similar things. There was a charity organisation out in Brunswick, I think, that was doing a similar sort of thing, but they were giving everyone, they were a bit of open source sort of zealots, and open source proponent, but not a zealot, and so they were giving them all installed with Linux and OpenOffice. Right. The problem there is that's completely useless to someone who then has to go work into a workplace or a TAFE or whatever, where they expect you to be using Windows and all these sorts of things. So so that's sort of part of the reason is it's avoid the waste rather than building new stuff. Part of it is to be able to be matched with the types of things they would be using if they move on with their journey in computing. So it's not this sort of big change. And a lot of the people we're talking about here, they do come from disadvantage. They're not necessarily, at the highest level of intellect, the highest level of technical sophistication. In some cases, they barely speak English, right? So to give, I guess it's about, and then if they go online and say, oh, how do I do X on my computer? that will all be geared around your typical Windows type environment, etc., versus your Pi. And then the other is, just from a logistical point of view, we're finding in the sort of probably 95+% of cases, they really need that portability of a full laptop type environment. And not that you couldn't take a Pi and lash a screen on and gaffer tape a keyboard to it and whatever else, right? But that sort of that simple utility of being able to pick up, slam the lid, off you go, off to your class, off to go work on the couch because the kitchen's full of people cooking or whatever it might be, is really important for a lot of our recipients.
Great, thank you.
Have they made any cool machines with them yet, Sean?
Yes, way too many. His focus at the moment is home automation. My home is currently rocking and shaking with all the bloody well tech. So Bunnings is a great thing, but it's also not a good thing when they're reasonably cheap and you can automate till the cows come home.
So you're quite pleased when Bunnings was closed for lockdown, then I'm guessing, Sean.
Yes, and then he discovered he could order online and do drive-by pickup. Bloody hell.
Damn those creativity of those kids.
I know.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
Like questions, thoughts, ideas. As I said, I'm always very, very keen on. We're trying to make the impact we can here. So, if there's things that you go, hey, why aren't you doing this, or have you thought of doing that? Always very happy on that too. So, a couple of good questions for you, Sean, in that vein.
Another question from me then, since I can be a pest perhaps, is where do you see the future? What does it look like, David?
For WombleTech, you mean? Or
for WombleTech, yeah. What does the next 3 years look like, and what would success look like for you in that period?
Yeah, so success in the next 3 years that we go to national scale. So we're operating in every jurisdiction of Australia, and we're operating at a scale that we've got a very regular supply of donations coming in through both, just the sort of perpetual motion of lots of different individual donations, but also the cyclical donations of organisational donations. So, for example, we've got one of DS's competitors, Mantel Group, sort of committed to giving us all of their. Sorry, Alicia. They've got a different model. They do own their equipment, and so as they roll off lease, they'll be giving us the end of lease. Well, not end of, so I don't think whether lease or buy, but at the end of life point. And so, getting more of those offtake agreements in place with people so we've got this very regular and predictable cadence of donations coming in. That way we can really expand the number of charity partners with, the number of communities that we reach out to, the categories of people that we reach out to. And look, whether it's 3 years might be a little bit ambitious, but as I said sort of during the presentation, I want to get to the point where we've saturated the Australian market. We've run out of people to find that don't have a computer and can't afford one. And so now we're going, okay, where can we take these? Can we take these, over, which countries can we take them to overseas, to, second and third world countries like the US, for example? So that was a joke. It's apparently a huge problem in the US as well. But no, the idea is to get it to that point, and then potentially do sort of complementary sort of services alongside. So, for example, actually offering some of the asset management services, so we can say, look, we'll come in, we'll turnkey. So we try and take as much of the problem off the hands of the donors as we can. So we'll secure Wi-Fi for you, we'll do this, we'll do that for you. Whereas we can even take it sort of a next step. So we'll help you, we'll actually have almost a professional services type component where we'll actually come help you transfer everything over to the new computers, do all this sort of stuff, and then take the other ones away responsibly for you. That's probably the key things in the mind at this point in time. And then we sort of talked about sort of expanding the sort of the product sets that we offer. So it might be sort of going a little bit more into some of the other sort of types of technology needs that the people have.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Awesome. That was I really thanks so much everyone for the for the questions, engagement, and the opportunity to share the stories and the ideas. And feel free, just ping me a message on my phone or email or whatever. I'm happy to take any thoughts and ideas, and donations very, very welcome. Either you can ping me directly, or you can go to our webpage. Where is it? Which, as Johnny did, where I present again. And if anyone's good at graphic design, our website probably needs an overhaul too. So feel free to reach out and offer your services. So there's a donation page here, put in the details, and then we organise either pickup or donation or collection. So we have drop-off locations in 5 places in Melbourne, and then we also do, as I said, through DS, we're doing pickups through or drop-offs into the Sydney office, as well as we'll just organise a courier. So we actually use Sendle courier services, and they charge about $11 to ship a laptop around. So actually, in that total cost of being able to place a laptop with someone, it's something that's very, very achievable. That we can still sort of run in that cash flow neutral sort of way.
Brilliant.
Thank you, Dave.
So thank you again, Pete, for reaching out and your great encouragement, enthusiasm, and making this happen, and Alicia also for your support and assistance and great feedback last week too.